I'm Jeannie Ralston. I'm the co-founder of Next Tribe, and it's Thursday evening, and we're doing our weekly literary event because we just love authors and we love good books. And we've got a really good one here. I have to say, I have so enjoyed this, and it's so weird to say that. It's called Black Widow, and it's so weird to say that because it's about a woman whose husband dies and her grief and her recovery. But I've never met or read a book that deals with loss like with such a light touch, where it feels approachable. I mean, you understand her emotions, the author Leslie Grace Streeter's emotions, but she's able to see some humor in it, and it makes it just such an easy read and insightful. And I welcome you, Leslie. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, and Leslie you are a entertainment columnist at the Palm Beach Post, and you've written for lots of publications. And
I have.
So, hold on. I don't know if the Facebook Live is working. Wait just 1 second. Do we see that? 1 second. Oh, well, we'll just keep going. I don't know what it's doing. But, Leslie, so you were going to start off by reading a little bit.
I am. And I go around. We've had a heavy couple weeks, so I'm going to start with a funny-ish passage. I like to, in the book, go back and forth between things that happened after my husband Scott died and sort of our backstory, because as one of his friends said, introduce him to Scott. Don't let it just be about some dead guy. So this chapter is about Scott winning a silent auction at a celebrity dance competition I was in when we first started dating, where I was wearing like mint green spandex. It's a whole situation. But anyway, we won. Among the things we won was a spa vacation at the Mandarin Oriental in Miami, where I had done press junkets before. So, and this is also where we first told each other that we loved each other. So here's the thing. Getting to stay at the Mandarin felt special because I had been there for press junkets to interview famous movie people. I once sat across from The Rock on a balcony as his publicist tried to cut off my interview so some TV people had more time. To his credit, he wouldn't let her. And then there was the time that Daniel Craig, arm in a sling, opened one of those tiny Diet Cokes from hospitality with his good hand. And I can't remember most of the interview because I think I might have passed out with my eyes open. My knees were actually sweating under my tall leather pirate boots. Daniel Craig makes your knees sweat. It's science. As often as I'd worked there, I'd never gotten to stay overnight in my own room like a normal rich person, because I am not a rich person, normal or otherwise. So when Scott showed me the gift certificate, my brain went fuzzy, and I was so excited that I found a special place on my foyer table to put it so I wouldn't forget. And then, of course, we drove 2 hours to the hotel and forgot it. The fancy front desk clerk at the Mandarin politely explained that she would need to see the actual piece of paper, and we were going to have to either produce it or Groupon it back up 2 hours up the highway in a rainstorm. Fortunately, our neighbors who were feeding my cat had a fax machine and sent it to the hotel. The day and our free weekend were saved. The fancy room wasn't much bigger than a normal one, but it seemed special somehow. There were some tasteful gold accents and shiny wood and some sort of perfectly subtle, elegant smell that you have to qualify financially to buy. I immediately sank into the bed and kicked off my shoes, because shoes are oppressive and a tool of the man. Maybe it was the power of the free fancy room, but I could feel distinct words forming under my tongue. I'd been denying them for a while, denying even thinking them. Although I did mention them in passing to Lynn, but we're twins, so she probably figured it out anyway. I didn't intend to be the first one to say it, what I now needed to say. I promised myself I wasn't going to be. It's a vulnerable thing to expose your tender heart to the elements, or to the one who could reject you. And since Scott had assumed the role of the sure one, the pursuer, I wanted to sit back in that tower that his assurances had built for me. If he said it first, I would know it meant that he was more sure than I was, and therefore would never leave me. But there we were, sitting on that perfect hotel bed, and Scott was smiling like a goofball, and the light was hitting that precious bald head just right. The words were fighting each other to be the first to break free of my mouth. I wasn't sure they were going to be in the right order, even if I could stop them. I was shocked at how much I didn't want to. I love you, I said, and the smile threatened to run off his face, clear to his ears. I love you too. Damn, I said. I wanted to say it first. Yeah, I know, Scott said. I decided I was going to wait till you did. Sometimes when you love someone and he says something infuriating, it's cute.
Very good, very good, good,
Thank
good,
you.
good. So, but I want to tell everyone who's listening, as if you've been to one of these before, I ask you to write your questions or comments in the chat, and then down the road a little bit, I'll call on you so you can ask Leslie yourself. That's why it's more fun and interactive. So, Leslie, just an incredible story, but you guys were went to high school together.
Yeah.
You re-met, and
Yeah.
how long were you actually married?
We were together for 6.5 years. We were married for 5.5 years.
Okay, so and the thing that I wonder is, well, when did you start working on the book? How?
I honestly, and I've told this story before, and you'll know from Lake Worth, Scott Iman, who was the Palm Beach Post's books editor, who was a pretty well-known Hollywood historian, written a lot of books about everybody, is a very good friend of mine. And I would always start writing fiction, like 2-3 chapters, and I get bored and like give up. And he said to me, kid, you're going to finish the book that you have to finish. So the day that my Scott died, we were in my kitchen in Lake Worth in College Park, little tiny greenhouse on Fordham Road. And I was sitting across the counter from him, and I said, I think this is my book. It just came out. And he said, I think it is, unfortunately. Because I like, who knows what you say right after a loss? Who knows what you say? You're like, I don't know what this means. You could say anything. I'm sure I said lots of things that I'm glad nobody held me to. But it just came out, and I physically felt the weight, like there was someone stepping on my chest, like I needed to get that out. So I probably started writing just like sentences and ideas, like literally on Post-it notes, on notes on my phone, on whatever. And I sat down to actually write probably 2 months. The first chapter about trying to buy the gravesite was the first thing I wrote. And that's why it feels so raw and so what? And that was probably the first thing I wrote.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, I've done a memoir, and you relive things when you write a memoir, and I found myself crying again when but how was it to go back and relive this? Seems
well,
challenging.
Some of it was happening in real time. Like when I first started writing it, for instance, I did not know what was going to happen. We had not yet moved, my mom and I, to the place where we live now. The adoption was not done yet. So I was writing a lot of this as it was happening. And I'm a journalist, so I do that. So I didn't know where it was going to end. I didn't know. I figured, and once, when I started writing.
We should say, we didn't mention that you were in the process of adopting when he died.
Yes, we were adopting a little boy who's a relative, who we had taken in, and he had been with us for more than a year when Scott died. So we were getting toward that process, but it wasn't over yet. So I didn't know it was going to go. It goes basically, spoiler alert, from the day after he dies to the day that the adoption is finalized. And that was almost a year to the day. It was a week earlier to that day. So God knows stuff I don't know. Yeah. And it figures it out. Yeah. So,
but for you was it painful to relive it when you were writing?
It was, and it wasn't. I mean, it was very cathartic. It was very much therapeutic to write it. The hardest thing, the chapter about the hearing where we go to see if the birth parents' parental rights are going to be denied, that was a really hard chapter to write, but mostly because not only was it a very emotional thing and I wanted to get it right, but I was writing around some things because I didn't want to tell exactly about backstories that are not mine.
Right.
And I wanted to, it was technical. So I'm a journalist. I want to get the steps right. I didn't want to fudge it. I wanted to like make sure that people understood. Because, for instance, it was interesting to me because I had never done that before, and I know there's people who don't understand anything about adoption because it's something that everyone doesn't go through. So I wanted to make sure that I got beats of it right without it making it a technical manual on how adoptions work. So that took some editing and some, okay, what really needs to be, and what you really care about is how we're feeling and how we felt as people. And that, to me, remembering that, it was hard because, I mean, I write columns which are like that big, and this book is like that big. And I want people not to be bored with it and to go, also because I'm not a celebrity. So when people write memoirs because they're Beyonce or they're like Vanessa Williams or Whoopi Goldberg, it's because you already love them and you know them. Like 8 people know who I am. So writing a book that people who've never heard of me care about was the thing. It's like, what can I put in this experience? It's unique to me, but also that people generally care about because I'm not a Kardashian.
Well, then, so when you were writing it and planning it, what were you thinking that you wanted people to get out of it?
What I wanted people to get about, and I don't know how many people here have lost anyone, and most of us have, unfortunately, at our age, but I wanted people to understand that there's no template for recovery. I had a really great talk with David Kessler, who co-wrote the book on grief and grieving with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross about the stages of grief. And it's funny because he said to me, I read your book, so you don't believe in it, right? I said, it's not that I don't believe in it. It's that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross never meant the stages of grief to be, you start here, and there's here, and then it's this, and this, and then, hey, it's over, you're healed. It was never meant to be that. And because it's been presented as stages that are consecutive rather than just all up in your face, blown up in your head, people don't really always understand. So you feel like you're doing it wrong. Or you're supposed to. And I think our American way of grieving has, bases in like Victorian ages where you're supposed to have a stiff upper lip and wear black and be solemn, or this kind of new age, it's farcical, like, ha ha, whatever, and we're really cool. Nothing affects us. We're really great. It can be a combination of those things, but it really has to do with who you are. And what I wanted to say was, you grieve the way you grieve, and there's no template for it. There's sort of a tell in the subtitle, which is a sad, funny journey through grief for people who normally avoid books with grief in the title, with journey, in the title, because I'm touchy about that word, because I love the band Journey. I understand the concept of journeys. I think sometimes people use the word journey just like they use artisanal or locally sourced or farm raised or whatever, because it's a thing. It doesn't mean, it's been used so much like words that like you say them a bunch of times, it doesn't mean anything. And it goes back to that there's a way to do this. There's a journey you have, and there's music in the back, and Inya is singing, and there's flowers and stuff.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Some people like that. Some people respond to that. So I cannot say that way of dealing with your grief with the specific journals and stuff, that's not what you do. I like a journal that goes, you don't know what you're doing, and neither do I. I like you, because I didn't know. And I knew enough from my mother having been widowed, and one of my best friends, the one who lives in Austin, her husband is widowed. And I knew enough people who had been through the experience that none of their experiences were the same. And I thought, I'm just going to write the way I write and hope that I have enough of a thread that's not like, it's not a guide per se. It's like not like a how-to. It's not self-help, but people have really responded to it, because I think that so much of us, when this happens, whether it's expected or not, we don't know what the hell we're doing.
Well, and I guess it's because we don't really talk about death as much in this country. as other countries do. So that's probably why, one of the reasons I found it so refreshing is you just took it head on, and you're like, you put us in your grief, but we felt sad for you, but I felt you as a complete person, and like you would laugh with your girlfriends, like, oh,
exactly.
There were so many, there were lines in there that, like one of the first things I said that it said, I can see Cousin Kim shaking her head. She's pretty sure that Scott wouldn't have wanted a mausoleum, but since he insists on being dead and I have to be here anyway, I like car shopping. I guess the line, since he insists on being dead, I was like, it was kind of surprising to be that. I mean, it's funny the way you put it, but I don't see that kind of thing much, and I like that.
I have to tell you, I'm on myriad message boards of widows, and people are coming in from their specific thing. And there was a young woman who lost her spouse a month ago militarily, and she said, I don't know how to tell other people besides you that I'm mad at him. I'm mad that he could have chosen to stay with me and he re-enlisted. I'm mad that we have kids and he knew this was a risk. And I know it sounds crazy and I feel bad about saying, because I love him and I miss him. And everyone's like, girl, be mad. Be mad. You don't have to be rational. I had this, there's a line in it where I talk about how it breaks your brain. It breaks your body. Grief just slaps you in the face. And it really is a desperation. And I'm like, college educated, middle class lady, well employed, with an amazing group of people who support me in my family and my job and my friend group, whatever. And I still had this moment of feeling completely untethered emotionally and situationally, where like I talk about how I couldn't say the word dead. I couldn't even say my battery on my phone was dead. I would say, my battery needs to be charged. Or if there's anyone from central Pennsylvania, the battery needs charged, if we say there. So you just kind of go nuts. And there was this, because I've had a lot of therapy. My mother is a psych nurse and I am surrounded by mental health professionals. Was very well aware of sort of the outside looking in observation about me. And also that's also being a columnist, that I've had to take at least some stock of sort of who I am and where I am at any particular place. But I think that's part of what people have related to. And I hope that people can tell me if I'm right, because there's this moment where you go, particularly I was 44, which isn't old, but it's older. I know 25-year-old widows, where I was at a place where I was supposed to know who I was and what I was doing. And I was like, I got nothing. I don't know what I'm doing. And to admit that was really great.
Wow. Yeah. And we have someone I'm close to, has said that it's hard because she actually lost a child. She says it's hard because people they never talk about her. They never ask her questions or talk about it because they were afraid it will upset her. And she wants to talk about, and that was a big learn. I mean, I guess everyone's different, but it did make me think, like, you don't want to.
It's not just that they don't want to upset her. And this is from my experience, is that they don't want to think about it. They want to do what they can to comfort her and move on. And if it gets too deep, if they have to think about what happened if they lost their own child or their own husband. One of my very, very best friends, like for 31 years, who came to the funeral. We had a girls' weekend a year later. And she said to me, I don't think I did enough for you because I was worried about thinking about my own husband. And what's so funny is I felt she was there the whole time. I was like, what more could you have done? You're literally here on the beach with me. You came and you went to the funeral, you did everything. But there was a moment after the funeral that she and one of my other roommates from college came to the funeral, and they came to the house. And the next day, rather than coming to the house, they were both so emotionally spent, they went to the Breakers on Palm Beach and got their nails done. And I thought that was great. I was like, you're away from your kids in July in Florida. Please, Scott wants you to. You already saw me. You checked on me. You texted me. Go to the Breakers. And she felt bad because she wasn't there. I said, there were a lot of people crying around me. It's fine.
So,
I think, it was fine. I was like, I said, I wish I had been at the Breakers, because I drove someone to the airport, and I literally was driving to the Breakers, and I thought, no, people are at my house still crying. I have to go back. Because I wanted to escape too, and it probably would have been okay with them. But I say this to say that some of the reason we're self-focused as humans, and we are like, here's a pop culture reference, like Grey's Anatomy. There's always a moment where, like, whatever the doctors are going through, magically, people who come through the ER at that point, they're going through something similar. And it's really, they're allegories in the story of the doctors or the technicians or whatever. And I think that's how we are as humans, that we're the star of our story. And other people come in and we go, what do we get out of this? So you can't help but say, how would this be? I have an aunt who I love, who is widowed, and I was then widowed a couple days earlier. My mother was widowed, and my aunt said to my sister, "You nervous?" And we went, "Oh!" But then we laughed. We laughed because it was a horrible thing, but it was this, and no one could do that to you like family, but we went, "Oh," and she was like, "I don't know how to answer that." I'm like, yeah. It was like widow humor, am I right?
widow humor. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Well, and some of the humor in the book comes from the fact that your husband Scott was Jewish.
Yes.
And so you were talking about, in some place you talk about how the Jewish ceremonies would be around death, and how your Black culture ceremony.
Yes.
So can you talk about some of those differences and how you figured it out?
What's so funny is, and I someone pointed this out to me the other day, when I say it's not, my book is not about the Black experience or the Jewish experience, but a Jewish experience and a Black experience, and how those connected, because everyone's is different. But then on the surface, yes, that like when his mom died about 6 months after we got married, she died in the morning on Labor Day, and we were in Baltimore that night. And the next day, because it was right before the Jewish New Year, she had to be on the ground before the New Year.
Right.
So we had no time to process this. We didn't know, no one had any time, but it had to be done. And suddenly I'm the senior female member of the family, in that immediate family. I'm like, I am literally a Black Baptist who's been in this family for 6 months. What? And people are coming in going, so, hey, so where do we put the kugel? I'm like, I'm not sure what that is. I will check. I will be right back. And I'm trying to support my husband, who's devastated. I'm trying to support my father-in-law, my brothers-in-law, who were devastated. And a lot of the people, because we got married in Florida, most of his family had not, his extended family, some of them had not met me. They knew who I was because I was a Black girl, but they had never met me. So it was going, how are you? Kugel goes there. And I didn't know what the heck was going on there. So like when he went to my grandfather's funeral, I read about, there was a mime, because in some Black churches, there's like, not in the churches I go to, there was a mime ministry. And so he was like, is this normal?
Is it a mime ministry for your grandfather?
Yes, because my grandfather was a pastor, and his church had a mime ministry, which is sort of like an offshoot of the like interpretive dance thing, where there was a woman, and it was beautiful. But literally, they go from the mime ministry. We go, what? And she shows up. She's a Black lady with her black leotard and thing on, with a skirt and her mime makeup, and we're like, what is this going to be? And it was incredibly moving. With my husband, who had never been to a Black funeral, goes, is this normal? Do you always have mimes? And I'm like, I am here to tell you, no, we do not. But the important parts, which is the moments of getting to talk to each other and getting to collectively say goodbye and tell stories and that kind of thing, are very similar. But the differences were really funny. Someone said to me once, they were like, they use the word conflict. And I was like, it's not a conflict in a bad way. It wasn't a like 1960s movie where it was all bad and everybody was mad at each other and whatever. The differences were awesome, because the common thing was we loved each other. And the differences we loved because they made it more interesting. I had something to learn and he had something to learn, and we embraced that.
That came through. That definitely came through. So Now, what is your, are you still writing columns, or are you doing something
I'm
else?
doing all kinds of things. I'm still writing columns and news stories and stuff for the Palm Beach Post. I just had a really great interview today with a young man who's an activist and a community leader in one of our local Black neighborhoods about a lot of stuff. And it was a great conversation. I interviewed a girl who was on The Voice. I interviewed a guy who was born here, who lives in Boston, was supposed to start touring, but his tour got canceled. And he hasn't seen his mom in 6 months because she lives here.
Oh,
So stuff like that. So I'm writing a lot of different stuff. I also write for some other publications. I'm also doing a lot of hustle. I don't know if anyone saw me on the Today Show on Tuesday, but that was cool. And I can't say a whole lot about this, but like we've optioned the book. We've optioned it to a studio for a thing. I can't say much more than that, but there's like stuff happening. Also, I'm trying to figure out what to do with my kid and, you know, what school gonna be next year.
and how old is he now?
He's 6, almost 7.
Okay. So I guess there's a lot of things I want to ask, but one is, what do you have? What kind of advice do you have? I know it's not a guide for grief, but
Okay.
But what are some of the things that you've kind of discovered along the way?
Well, like I said, the fact that you giving yourself a break and admitting that it's okay that you don't know what you're doing every moment, that you don't have a chart, that you don't have a template, and that you can't fail grief. You can't do it wrong unless you're slapping your kids and lighting your puppies on fire. And we're not doing that. You're fine. You're fine. I mean, I know you hear these stories like, oh, my dad couldn't stand to be alone. He married the widow woman next door in 3 months. Okay. Unless she's raiding his coffers, it's not your business.
Right.
It's not your business what someone else does. My mother has told me stories of people that she knows who got together and people thought it was too soon. And it was like very shunny. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. It was shunny. And you know, that basically what I've learned is that you have to give yourself a break. You have to let yourself breathe. Your entire life went nuts. I mean, other than a kid, and I've never had this happen and hopefully never will, other than your child dying, your partner dying is the thing that most immediately affects you. My dad dying rocked my world in many ways, but it did not affect the day-to-day of my household. It did not affect my finances. It did not affect who picked my kid up and who was available to pick my kid up from daycare, or how much I might need another partner in my mom or a babysitter. You know, it didn't affect a lot of things. It hurt me, my dad dying, but your spouse dying, your partner dying, it's like a day-to-day, like,
yeah,
there's one less person, and I'm the one who has to make decisions about things. I'm the head. I'm literally changed my tax status from married to widow to head of household. Head of household. Was not expecting that. So basically give yourself a break because you were sitting on a tectonic plate you didn't realize was super fragile and about to break the hell apart. Let yourself breathe.
But
and give yourself.
How did you, I mean, your friends around you seem like they were eager to make you laugh or whatever.
All of it. They were eager to everything.
But how do you encourage your friends? Like, don't treat me like I mean, you know.
I had a friend I had a discussion with today who was going through her own thing not long after Scott died. And she said to myself and another friend of mine, she sat us down and she said, here is what I need from you. Here is how to love me through this crisis, through this ordeal. And we were close enough that she knew we weren't going to be insulted. We weren't going to go, well, how dare you, you know? Mm-hmm. And I've tried to carry that forth in every relationship that I have, whether it's a crisis or not, saying, it's like, and those of you who used to live in Palm Beach County will get you. When like rich people go, I got a bunch of stuff and this is what I'm donating. And they give it to you. And they go, you should thank me because this is what I gave you. And whether it's just because I wanted to clean out my closet or because I didn't use it anymore, I don't fit into it anymore. Thank me, poor people. Here's my thing. I think as friends, we can't just want to give our friends what we think they want or what we need to give them. We have to give them what they need if it's going to make any difference. And I think that for my friends, we're very good. Like I talked about my friend Libby, who knew when I just needed to hang out, and she knew when I needed to like get the hell out of the house. She knew it was good for me and for my mom and for my kid, who was still almost a baby. And so when she showed up and she calls me and she says, we're going out. And I go, what? She goes, Uber's on the way. And I go, I'm going to go. She goes, all right, talk to your mom. You don't got nowhere to go. Put some shoes on. Don't smell. We're leaving. And she understood that sometimes I'd want to stay out for 2 hours. Sometimes I was good for a half an hour. But she saw when I needed to. And if I had burst into tears at the door, she would have made me go. But she asked and knew, and she goes, is this okay? And I said, yes. And that's what we have to do. That's how to be a good friend. Oh, I see some really good questions about friends hearing.
Yes.
Let's do some of that.
Okay. Fran, why don't you ask your question? I'm going to unmute. There you are.
Sure. Thanks. First, Lizzie, I think you're fabulous. I wish we were girlfriends and we could ordinary. So, having worked with writers my whole life, and speaking as someone, I'm always worried what people think about me. Like,
yes.
After you wrote the manuscript and you handed in, and before it's published, did you like freak out at all? Like, oh my God, like it revealed so much, or what will people think?
I one of the first things I did, I don't know if anyone here has ever seen the show on OWN called Queen Sugar, which is an amazing show, but there's a character named Nova who considers herself very enlightened and whatever, and she writes this memoir where she basically outs her entire family's secrets, and she doesn't tell them about it before she does it. So I had this moment that season came out as I was having the book edited, and I had this moment where I thought, I don't want to be that person. So I had made sure that if you were significantly mentioned in the book, that I sent you your chapter, and I said, is this what happened? Did I get it wrong? There's one person I didn't, because the person's not in my life anymore and it wasn't significant enough, and he's going through some stuff. I didn't want to bother him, but everybody else got their chapter. And I wanted to make sure that because memory's weird. There's things that I go, this happened, then this happened. People go, no. This happened before that. And I was like, this is my story, so I'm going to tell it the way I'm going to tell it. But as a journalist, I didn't want to be inaccurate. So I just wanted to make sure, like, my grandmother was apprised of the fact that there were curse words in it. So when she told her friends at the church about it, they weren't mad. They were fine with it. And that I didn't say anything about personal family relationships that were not true or that were not exploitative for no reason. I'm not that person. I dislike memoirs when people go, I'm going to hurt your feelings because I can. Because as a journalist, I always like to ask, why am I saying this? And as a memoirist, I held to the same thing. So I overshared. My brother-in-law was like, I need to know all that. I'm like, I don't really care. It was fine. And he still liked it anyway, so.
Wendy, you had a comment, I think. I'm trying to unmute you.
No, I just said a lot of people just disappeared. My husband died a year ago.
I'm sorry.
We were married for 44 years.
Oh, no.
And all the people I thought I could count on just disappeared.
And can I curse?
Yes, of course.
That is some bullshit. And I'm sorry that happened to you, because I know, fortunately, there were one or two people I really thought were going to be around that kind of ghosted, but they were more people that were friends of my husband's that I thought was good, and they were dealing with their own stuff that I really thought would be around. And I know that if my husband if they had died, he would have been there for their partners and their widows and their family. And that made me very angry, because I was coiled in this thing where I was all about, I felt like I was his protector, in perpetuity, and I had to do that. And I had to let that all go. And I'm sorry, Wendy, that happened. Do you have enough people that you think, did you have other people that stayed with you?
Hold on. Can you unmute? Yes.
We were fairly new to the area because we were from Lake Worth. So we didn't know a lot of people here, which didn't help. But it was just odd because even after it got to like 6 months after he was gone, people just kept saying, "You're still upset?" I mean, it was just, they kept saying, "Aren't you better now?" It was just so annoying. It's like nobody gets it.
Nobody gets it.
Through it.
And once again, I imagine people who are your age and my age, that's getting to the point where that starts to happen and they don't want to think about their own partner dying. And so they're like, I can't hear you. Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's my fault. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Wendy.
Unmute yourself.
Oh, now I'm trying. See, sometimes I can't. There.
Oh, there she is.
No, I was just very lucky that a couple people that I didn't expect to be there were there. It was the people that I thought I could count on disappeared.
Girl, that's one of those things that I've had that happen in so many situations, like job losses or, you know, just so many things where you go, oh, that's who you are.
Mm.
And it's a very painful way to find that out.
Yes.
It's very painful. I'm glad you had those unexpected people to come in.
Thank you.
And I think you said something, Leslie, that I think makes sense, is that you think that some people are scared to be around, or maybe you've said it in the book as if it's contagious, you know, like, you know, your husband died. And
yes. Yes.
You found that happening?
Oh, it certainly felt that way. It certainly felt, my friend who I thought was very attentive said that she felt like some of her reticence was that our husbands were the same age, and she thought, oh my God, I don't want to think about that. And once again, I never felt that, which was so funny because I felt like she was super, super involved. But yeah, I think a lot of people think like, not just like the death is catching, but that grief is catching and weirdness is catching. Like you would go out and people would go, you know, hey! So either I was one extreme or the other. And Wendy, you may have felt that either people wanted you to act like you were at the end of the Lifetime movie where everything was great and the handsome carpenter in the town you just met was like your guy, or they expect you to be the widow Zervitz in the black sackcloth in perpetuity and don't want you to be happy, or they put you in this box where they're watching you like, are you too happy? Are you recovering, you know, too fast? Are you dating too fast? Are you smiling when you should be sad? And it's just, people just need to leave you the hell alone sometimes.
And what about yourself, judging yourself? You obviously had moments of laughing with friends and things, but did you ever feel like, oh my God, I can't be laughing, or I shouldn't be this happy, or, you know, have a happy moment?
I did occasionally, but as you can see, I got over that really quickly because I've always, and Wendy, if you read my stuff, I process things humorously. I always have. That's who I am. And so when I wrote the book, it just kind of came out that way. And I didn't set out to write a funny book. Set out to write a real book, and the way that I am real is through funny. But also then there's parts where I would read it and go, oh my God, what was I doing? I want to stab myself in the face. It's just, you know. But that's kind of how humans work. There's a reason that, like, the comedy and the tragedy masks, you know, the only thing separates them is the way their smile goes. It's the same thing. And we teeter-totter between those. So there were times where I thought, this particular person will not want me to laugh. Or I was very sensitive around Scott's family, that I did not want them to think that I was not being reverent or whatever. And they were like, too. I mean, in the book, his cousin, who was raised with him like his brother, you know, does the Jefferson sing along at the funeral. So, I mean, there was a lot of,
yes, that's right.
You know, so other people were dealing with that way as well. So once I realized that I couldn't really control it, and I was giving myself a break and not policing my emotions at 3 days into widowhood, because why? I kind of got over it. So,
Janice, Cal, you had something to say if you wanted to say it directly.
Leslie, I love you. I love you so much. I can't wait to read your book.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I lost my husband not quite a year ago, and you know that whole thing you said, like, to your sister or somebody, are you nervous? In the last 5 years, I lost my father, my mother, and my husband. And I'm thinking,
no.
nobody's going to want to sit next to me at the party. But
First of all, I'm so sorry. But yeah, it's true, 'cause I lost my mother-in-law in 5 years. I lost my mother-in-law, Scott's grandmother, my grandfather, my step-grandmother, a couple aunts,
oh, wow.
my dad, and then Scott, and then one of Scott's cousins / uncles. So we were, and I said, so I'm cursed.
Yeah.
You know, and you feel your laugh is beautiful. I'm so sorry about your losses, and I'm so happy that you can do that. God bless you. That's amazing.
Yeah, and my husband and I shared a huge, funny sense of humor, and dealt with lots of things that way. So that kind of comes naturally, like you were talking about.
That's awesome.
You know, the whole thing of, you think people are judging you the way you should act. My husband was sick for a very long time, and I have to say, probably the first 3 months, I was just relieved. And you know, that's kind of not that acceptable.
No, it's not.
Some people, and you know, I kind of blasted out of my life like I'd been shot out of a cannon. And then later I was sad and I was mad and I was all that, you know. So it was very strange.
I feel that, but once again, in that moment, that's how you feel. And even it doesn't make a difference, because people have said to me, so do you think you would have felt differently if he had been sick for a long time and you had time? Or versus what happened with us, which is he just died. Yeah. And I was like, all of it would be pretty horrible.
It's all
awful. It's all loss. And people do want to see if you're, like I mentioned, like, you know, it's sort of like weird Victorian thing, like there were rules, and at this point you can lift your veil, at this point the butcher down the street may court you, and like, you know, sorry.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you're not the boss of me.
No, I just, ugh. Yeah.
But thank you, Janice. And Jeannie Hawkins, if you had something to say, and can you unmute yourself? Because I'm really bad. I can't find people. There you are. Can you unmute yourself? There you are, Jeannie.
There I am. Yeah. So Leslie, I love you too.
Yeah.
I lost my husband almost 4 months ago.
Oh no.
And went straight into this whole lockdown thing. And so I've read probably every grief book ever written in the last 4 months. Mm-hmm. And yours is the one that made me laugh.
Good.
And made me feel like I was going to be okay. Because the rest of them are solemn and sad and the, you know, the stages and I got something out of all of them, but yours just made me crack up and
I'm glad.
And laugh. And I had a similar story when I realized, oh shoot, I'm supposed to be the widow in a funeral, and what am I going to wear? And I need to go shopping. And the lady's wanting to know, what do I want this special dress for? And I don't really want to tell her until she forces me to tell her. And anyway, it's like the one book I read where I didn't have a pit in my stomach the whole time. I could totally relate, although I'm old enough to be your mother and I was married for almost 40 years, so it was different. But I could totally relate to what you were going through and your humor, and I thank you for just being so honest and funny at the same time, because life is funny.
Life is funny, and sometimes it's funny, haha. Sometimes it's funny, ironic. Sometimes it's funny, like I just need to laugh so I don't stab somebody.
Exactly.
And I think that my humor runs the gamut of all of those things.
Right.
And it's just the only way that I learned how to get through it. I mean, and just like I said, there is worth for a lot of people in the very solemn books and the very kind of like sincere to a fault kind of books. And that's just not who I am as a person.
Right.
I mean, I'm very sincere. I love people. I love rainbows. There's like, you can't see on the window across from me is like, you know, strings of paper flowers. I mean, I love pink. Everything in my room, including the book, is teal. And like, but at the same time, there's also just off camera lots of boxes and weird shoes and a drunk glass of rosé. You know, it's kind of all over the place, and that's real. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
And Patrice has, Patrice, can you unmute yourself? You had a comment that was interesting. I thought.
Where's Patrice?
Are you there, Patrice?
Where'd she go?
Let me try to unmute her. Something's wrong with where I can't unmute people. But I know she said something about.
Oh, there she is. I don't know if she's still there. She's not on. Patrice, come back to us if you. Okay.
Okay. Never mind. Stephanie, you had something to say. Stephanie, yes.
Yeah, what I typed was, well, thank you for coming to Next Tribe. I typed something because my younger sister lost her husband about 2 years ago, and they were only together 4 years, married 4 years. And she, you know, I think it kind of depends on what kind of relationship you have. I'm married to an African. We've been married 20 years, and we don't have that every, you know, there's some relationships, I'm not complaining, but like every 20 minutes or half an hour, they'll call each other. Like, what are you doing? What time are you having for lunch? I'm at work. I'll be home in an hour. What do you want to do tonight? We don't have that kind of relationship. Sometimes we don't even talk for 2 days because he comes from like a spiritual clan, and he's very quiet. And but it's not a misunderstanding. If something's to be said, we say it. Whereas my sister could probably never deal with that. So because they were so codependent, and we're so like in each other for like every hour, even though she was at work or he was at home or whatever, it was so much harder for her to cope with. And I think in her relationship past, she was very like partner focused. And if that partner wasn't there, it just is really difficult to like for her to get along with other people.
Sure.
And so she needs a little humor. So I want to buy the book for her.
Good.
Because she has a lot of books at home, like the other person said, about grieving that's really sad. But I want to read it too because, you know, because of the relationship I'm in, I'm kind of curious where you found humor, because sometimes my husband is like the funniest person in the whole world, and you wouldn't even think he's funny. You know, I mean, he doesn't know he's funny, but I know that if he passed away, I would be devastated, you know, and yet I'd remember all these funny moments. So thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. I'm so sorry for your sister's loss. I think a lot of it is that, once again, like I said, I tend to process things through humor, and maybe sometimes that's a defense mechanism, and sometimes I think that's just naturally where I kind of fall. But I wrote things down the way they felt, and I interpreted the moment. I mean, there's some people who would not see the funny things, but I mean, anyone who's ever been to a funeral knows that there's moments where it's a distraction, where like you notice whose skirt is too short, and you know who showed up to your grandma's funeral, and you know, like, my grandma, why are you here? And who your grandma didn't like, and you noticed who got drunk and slipped in the punch, and whatever it is. So noticing those moments, as a journalist, I observed them, and also I think I needed to, because I needed to like connect to the human life that was still happening and buzzing around me in the room, and I just wrote them down. And so so what was significant about this moment, and it was my husband's cousin Lena sing-along, or the fact that my sister and I were literally trying to figure out a song she could sing that didn't mention Jesus so the Jews wouldn't be upset. You know, I mean, whatever it was. And she sang this Amy Grant song, and everyone's like, oh, that's so great. And I'm watching all the Jewish people going, please don't say, what, the Amy Grant, what are we doing? You know, it just, all of it was just funny, because it was sad and it was weird, but it's where we were. And that's why it was funny, and it was a relief, and it was, I like said, a distraction from the person who was deceased in the casket. And it was just a moment of remembering that we were still alive.
And that, I just also wanted to ask you about grief in general. Is that like at this time, a lot of us are grieving for something?
Oh my Lord, yes.
Do you have anything? is that what you talked about on the Today Show?
That's what I talked about on the Today Show, when I was on the Today Show, darling. Yes, it was, because it was about sort of like the intersection between COVID, where, you know, so many people who died not only of COVID, but who died before that, that we missed going to funerals. We missed going to, people canceled weddings and people canceled memorial services. And there was just this moment where you felt like not only were people dying around you, but you could not properly grieve the people that you were already losing, already had lost. And obviously we're having this, you know, sort of racially reconciliatory moment at the end of it, and the stock market's doing a thing, and what are the kids going to do? It's just like a big old right now. But we're grieving both people. We're grieving what we had assumed was our autonomy, those of us who have autonomy or had it financially and physically in the way that we live. We're grieving missed vacations and weddings and graduations and things that come once in a lifetime that are not going to happen. And our sense of control, our sense that we knew that we could say 6 months from now, that's exactly what my life will be. And a year from now, I'll be taking this cruise because you don't know. Or I'll be going to this graduation because you don't know. And I think that we have to, as David Kessler said, admit that that's where we are. Admit that that's what this is. Name that feeling and then sink into it. No one wants to say I'm grieving because it sucks. But I've been there for the last 5 years, so I was very clear that that's what it was. So maybe we widows have that kind of on lock a little more because we've already tapped into that realization that we don't control a thing.
And also that you don't control. I mean, for you, you saw that so clearly because it was one day, it was one moment he was there, and the next moment not. So that whole so you said you've already practiced that, I guess. But so we're looking for you for advice on like.
Sure, and even though it's different, like I said, everyone's grief is different. We are grieving different things. We have a giant sense of loss for so much of, you know, our country and what in our world, and sort of like our own sense of, like I said, control or autonomy.
Yeah.
And it's something we have to deal with. We can't pretend it's not real because it is.
Yeah. And you've made some really great observations too about your experience. I mean, you're interracial couple, and I just thought I just ask you your take on what's happening. You have a son who's a Black boy, right?
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
and I'm just thinking.
So first of all, thank you for asking me that. I think that right now, I think we're all sort of, there were moments that we've already known this was a reality. I mean, from Trayvon Martin to the 13-year-old child in Cleveland who had the 911 operator said, we think it's probably a toy gun, and the police literally opened the door and shot him without saying a word, just shot him. And we have known that Black kids are not considered kids, that they are assigned a menace and an adulthood and a maturity that they do not have, and that generally people think of you different. I mean, my son was 3 years old and someone said he looks 6, and I said, no, he doesn't. He's 3, because that was the start of it. That was the start of people assigning an authority to him he doesn't have, and then maybe a menace to him. And he was a baby. And maybe they didn't mean it that way, but I took it that way because there's studies that say that people misage, particularly Black girls, and assign a sexuality to them earlier than they appear to be. And they protect white girls in a way that they don't protect Black girls, in terms of like, oh, so did she disappear and we have to look for her, or was she just some girl who ran away? And that's not just racial too, that's also socioeconomic, that girls who are white and poor are given less of a break on television when they go missing or whatever than people who are not. All that to say, there were things we knew anyway. And it's both very sad to have to go through that again. We have to read another story about how everyone sucks. Oh, it all sucks. But also that people are really beginning to understand it. And it's frustrating that people weren't listening when we talked about it 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago. But there was something about that moment, I guess it was incontrovertible proof, when a man is suffocated under another man's knee for 9 minutes and you can't look away, that just eroded, it just exploded a thing. And however you come down on it, I mean, I have family, I have police officers and military members and stuff in my family. I don't generalize anyone or anyone's intentions. I'm just saying there is clearly a problem, and we can't pretend that it's not. Hi, Patrice, she's back.
Oh no, but she says she has a call. She has to leave.
Oh no, bye, Patrice.
But hi, Patrice. But well, I appreciate that, because I do think, and that's one thing, you know, I'm a white woman, and I really try to understand.
But you asked the question. You knew that there was a question to ask, and I think for so many people, they don't know what to say, and they don't want to maybe hear that maybe they've done something, or they don't want to it's just weird to ask these questions. And I get it. We're at a moment where I think we can't afford not to ask those questions. No, I don't want to it's in this context, it's great. I don't necessarily appreciate when people I haven't talked to in 10 years literally pop up on Facebook at 10:30 at night and go, hey, tell me everything bad that's ever happened to you. I'm like, delete.
Yeah.
Delete. Because we don't have that relationship, and I'm not just a person who exists to tell you stuff. Oh, Syriac, what's that?
What's that? She said, what do you hold for the phrase time heals?
Oh, Lord. Time heals cuts on your hand. I think that time heals all wounds thing. It's one of those things that people say when they want you to shut up. It's a equivalent of when someone said, Scott's finished his cycle around the sun, or everything has its time, or turn, or fuck you, sorry. And time will scab a wound. Time will heal a wound, but there's still a scar. And it doesn't go away. And there's still a dent in your skin. There's still a discoloration. I got scars on my hand. I can't even tell you where they came from. There was a pain, there was a wound, and exists the evidence of it. And the evidence in our brains and in our souls and in our psyche and our memory will exist for a very long time, maybe forever, in ways that we can't even appreciate. But you have to say that, yes, I am not grieving Scott in the same way I was 5.5 years ago. And I've had a lot of therapy and a lot of friends, and a lot of just counsel just with people. And my life has changed, and it's okay for that to have happened. I don't feel guilt about that in the way that I did at some point. So time, as it does heal the wound, but the scar always goes away. And I love him still, it's not, he's not here. I have dated. I would like to at some point get another partner or whatever. It's not going to be a replacement. It's going to be a different person. I still will always be his widow, and I still will always love him in that way. And I will always have lost him. That will never not be true. Mm-hmm. It's I always think about in the Bible when they give Job gets, hey, it's your new family. And I always thought after, God and the devil kill the previous family off and burn his wheat down or whatever. And then you go, but he still lost that other family. This bonus family isn't there's still that moment where you go, but I miss Mary, dude. I miss Johnny. I mean, we got Stacy and Bob here, and they're really great. But, I'm sorry. I don't know that Job's wife's name was Stacy. I'm making that up.
Well, no, but that's beautiful. And I think what's wonderful is that you're able to have Scott live on, your tribute to him, your memories are here, and at the same time, you're helping other people, which is a beautiful thing.
Thank you. And if anybody, I know we're getting close, if anybody has questions, you can find me on Facebook at Leslie Streeter, or it's Leslie Gray Streeter. You can also find me on Twitter at Leslie Streeter. You can DM me, and Leslie Gray Streeter on Instagram. You can DM me as well.
And I will put those, I always send a link to the the recording to everyone, and I can send the link to you as well, Leslie, but I'll put in her handles for social media in that email so people can have that. But thank you so much for coming.
This was great. This is one of my favorite things I've done. This is really great.
I'm so happy to hear. I'm going to unmute everybody so everybody can sing your praises unless they don't.
Ready to go.
Excellent.
And hi, Betsy.
Thank you.
I know Betsy. Hi.
Thank you. It's great.
Did everybody get unmuted if they wanted to be? I don't know, but if you want to.
Extraordinary.
It was really
Thank you. Oh my
beautiful.
gosh. So great.
And I highly recommend
Thank
it.
you.
And like Stephanie said, it's a great gift for somebody. So
Yes.
thanks to all of you.
Leslie.
Thanks, Leslie. I
Awesome.
can't wait to see what you do next, Leslie.
Oh, me neither. Bye, puppy.
Thank you.
Bye.